Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Two Peas in a Podcast. It's Tuesday, November 20. I'm sorry, excuse me, November 19th.
Yeah.
Getting a little ahead of myself here. And I am Phil. I am P2, and across from me is Paul.
Hey guys, welcome to another Two Peas in a Podcast. I'm still in recovery mode from a couple weeks ago, November 5th. I'm kind of getting better, but I'm not there yet. So forgive me if today a little bit of the ridiculous shell shock of November 5th comes up. But we want to thank you for joining us for this Two Peas of a podcast. And you can see our number is on there for you to call in. We tend to get phone calls at the end of the show. We want you to call in sooner. The number is 216-584-5400. I'm going to turn it back over to Phil so he can kind of give us an introduction into today's program and our special guest.
Yes. Well, today's program is one that I've been thinking about for a long time. But before we talk about today's program, I do want to spend a couple of seconds about the election because I am still pissed as hell.
Oh, yeah.
It's beyond incredulous that Donald Trump was elected. And to see what was on the headlines as before we walked in is that he's about to do some recess appointments to get all of his picks through, just bypass the Senate. And do that, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop it because Mike Johnson is now MAGA Mike Johnson.
I thought I had heard that Mitch McConnell said that he wasn't going to allow recess appointments and that he was going to implement the usual Senate confirmation process, and that people were upset with him because of that.
Yeah, I'm saying that's what I saw today. Is just the fact that it's gotten to this point where Trump is saying, well, I don't care about signing an ethics pledge. I don't care about advice and consent. These are the people I want, and they're going in. And Mike Johnson has got his back, and that's what's crazy. And the through line with all of this is that Trump has been elevated to almost a deity status, and that he can do no wrong. And that to me is just total utter bullshit. It pisses me off.
Right.
But this is the world we live in. So
it's scary because I believe it was shortly after the election. You know, up until the election, most Republicans were saying, "Well, no, he didn't mean that. He didn't mean it like that." Well, they're not saying that anymore. As a matter of fact, one Republican said, "Listen, he's the leader of this party. If Donald Trump says jump 3 feet and then hold your nose, that's what we're going to do because he's Donald Trump and he's in charge." So he really feels like he has a mandate now that he has the House, he has the Senate, he has the Supreme Court, and he has immunity.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really scary. I talked to a coworker yesterday, and he said, "Well, you know, Paul, it's everybody's so worried about what's going to happen over the next 4 years. Everything's going to be okay. It's just going to be 4 years." I suspect that he probably voted for Donald Trump, and that's okay. But I told him this. I said, "Listen, he tried 4 years ago to stop the peaceful transition of power." I said, but what stopped him from being able to do that last time was there were adults in the room. I said, those adults are gone.
Right.
Guardrails are off. The people that he's putting in place now are sycophants, those people that are doing nothing but trying to follow after their God, which is Donald Trump. And so we can't say that it's going to be all right. You know, all we can do is hope that it's going to be all right, but there's no indication based on the choices. He's already, this guy from Fox News that is a Fox News host. He wants to be the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah.
He wants Matt Gaetz, who's a suspected child molester, to be the Attorney General.
Who will then go in and then can squash all of the inquiries and just be done with it. But the last thing I'll say, and then we can go to our special guest, the last thing I'll say is that Hitler was elected.
That's right.
So he was elected Chancellor of Germany. All right, so today's show is prompted by something that Paul and I have discussed, and that is that a lot of people struggle with their faith. And so the question that is posed today is, what happens when faith is interrupted by tragedy? And today's special guest is, for full disclosure, is a friend of mine. Miesha Wilson Headen. She is the widower. She's the widow of a very dear friend of mine, Raymond Headen, who passed away earlier this year. And I wanted to say to Miesha, welcome, Miesha.
Thank you for having me.
Also, I'm glad you were willing to come on. And so, Miesha, rather than go through sort of like a question line by line, I wanted to give you an opportunity to share your journey before we'll talk about the span of what happened during the moments you considered the intervention of tragedy. What was your journey like spiritually from the time you can remember up until late last year?
Oh, that's really interesting. I was thinking about when I was preparing to come on the program. And actually, part of the reason why I chose to come on the program is I would love to hear from you because atheism is utterly foreign to me. So I am a mainline Protestant Christian for my entire life. And so I am because that is how my spirit and my soul and my person speaks to me. But also, I would fully admit that it's a cultural thing for me as well. I am from 3 generations of ordained people. My great-grandfather, Joel, who was released from slavery, he was educated by the Methodists at a college in Mississippi, in Holly Spring, Mississippi. So he was the first person in my maternal family to get his college education because, it's the South, right? So the Methodists wanted to educate the black men to preach the word to the people because, of course, the churches were still segregated. Like they weren't coming to the white church, so they had to set up their own Methodist church. But they did educate him, and that was a good thing. And then my grandfather was an ordained deacon, and then my mother was a pastor of a church here in Cleveland, the Living Truth Center in East Cleveland on Belmore. So my religious faith is actually very much a part of my family, like it's part of my culture.
Okay, so one of the things that I would want to explore as we talk about it, but just to give you before we go down that particular path, is to explain that as an atheist, my belief is that there is a non-belief simply because someone proclaims that there's a deity. It's not on me to disprove that there is no deity. It's important to say where's the evidence of a deity, and simply proclaiming that there is one is not sufficient evidence for me because because you proclaim to believe in a deity or that a deity does exist, call it God, Jehovah, Yahweh, whatever you want to call that deity, does not Zeus. You can call it anything. It doesn't mean it exists. That deity exists simply because you proclaim it. As an atheist, I need evidence. So since there is no evidence that justifies the belief in a deity, I remain unconvinced that a deity exists. And on the middle of the spectrum,
middle of the spectrum would be me, which is agnostic. So I am not sure what's out there or why it's out there. People ask me questions. Well, how could this happen and why could that happen? I actually had a conversation with my son about a month ago, and he's saying, "You see all the beautiful trees, the flowers, all the things that have happened in the world. How can you say that these things weren't created? Everything had to have a creation. So how can you say there isn't a God?" So my response was, "So everything had to be created?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "So who created God?" And he said, "Well, I hadn't thought about that." And so that's where I'm at. There's unanswered questions for me, but I just don't, because of the things that I have experienced in my life, subscribe to and accept things at face value anymore. Things that just don't make sense to me anymore. I don't say, well, I'll just have to have faith and accept that, there's things that God is doing out there that goes beyond my knowledge. I don't think that my Heavenly Father should keep something above my head as far as my knowledge base, and that's usually the excuse when things aren't explained. When I talked before on our program about an airplane crash where there's 150 people killed and 3 people survive, right? And the 3 people are given credit. God is given the credit for a miraculous saving of those 3 people. But the 147 people, they're just basically a horrible tragedy. So at this point in my life, I no longer accept things, and I say to myself, there's no, similar to Phil, there's no evidence that there is a singular omnipotent God up in heaven. It has to be a man, of course, because, God had to be a man because he was created by man. That's in control of things. And just look at this past election to let you know that, if God was really in control, this man had 34 felony convictions. He is a total racist. He's sexist. He had tried to overthrow the peaceful transition of power back in 2021. And yet folks said that was not a deal breaker for them. And I feel if there was a heavenly Father up in heaven, he would have had some form of intervention. And those are the types of things that make me say, no way that there's a God that's in control down here. So that's where I'm at. And that's, I'm still evolving. I'm probably evolving more on the atheist end of things than I am on moving back into Christianity. But it's not just, and we seem like people probably think we beat up on Christians, but it's not just about Christianity. It's about Buddhism, Islam. I don't believe that any of these religions have a basis in fact anymore without the evidence. So that's where we are.
You guys are upset about this election.
I told you it might come up a few more times. You just don't know. It's like I say, I talked to my coworker yesterday, and he just said, well, everybody is so worried that things are going to be so bad. And I mean, there's reasons why we're worried. Just look at this. He hasn't even been inaugurated yet, and he's already doing crazy stuff. So, the only good silver lining of this whole thing is that there's no more excuses. Now they have the House, they have the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branches. They have the Supreme Court, they have immunity. Things should be beautiful now. They said they're going to close the border. Now, this is what I just heard, and then we can get back to it. I just heard that they're about to call some type of
national emergency.
So they can get the military involved to do mass deportations. Yeah. So all these Latino folks that voted for him, when your grandmother and grandfather are being, the doors being knocked down and they're being
abuela, abuelo.
Oh well, FAFO.
Yeah, exactly.
Check that out.
Yeah. So Miesha, let's talk about what happened during this period that sort of caused you some level of stress. And I don't want to speak for you, but you can just talk about from late last year through this year.
Tell your story.
Yeah.
This program is really about you, but about people that may have had similar instances, and they have not come to terms with it. And in some ways, I feel like this can be therapeutic for those that are out there that may have dealt with something similar. So we really want to open the door up for you to just tell your story.
Okay, I will. I'll just tell my story. I feel like I should... I will just tell my story. That was a really open question. I'm trying to figure out how to tackle this. As I was leaving to come here, I was talking to my 17-year-old son, and I was telling him the topic of the program, which is sort of, in summary, how has tragedy impacted your faith? Does that sound like an accurate?
So, close enough, yeah.
And my 17-year-old, who was obviously raised in the church, just like his parents, said, "What's the correlation?" I say that because it's kind of hard for me to kind of answer your question, because I'm very much on the same page as my 17-year-old, which is like, I don't really see the correlation between having experienced a tragedy and an impact on my faith. My husband died of stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and nothing happened to my faith. It didn't increase. It didn't decrease. is exactly the same. And I think that this is why you guys would make a mockery of Christians, because I firmly believe that God is sovereign, and sometimes you're not going to like the decisions that he makes. It is what it is.
Right. And with total respect to where you are and your comfort zone, those are the very reasons why I ask the questions, because I've experienced friends back when I used to pray, because I don't pray anymore. I've had friends that have dealt with issues like cancer, and on Facebook it's been I need my prayer warriors, because I was just diagnosed with cancer, and I actually, both Phil and I have dealt with prostate cancer. But the prayer warriors are out there. I need you guys to pray for me. And, immediately your friends, you see the praying hands, and you know that folks are out there praying for you. And I can't tell you how many times within 6 months or a year or 2 years, that same person or someone in the family said, I just want to thank everybody for all of your prayers. God had plans. My uncle, my sister, my brother, my father received his wings this morning. So I guess my question to you was, and again, this is with all respect and sensitivity to your situation, do you feel that prayer played a role in any type of outcome as it relates to your husband?
Interesting. I feel like I should make a disclaimer before I continue any further. To heal people, to spread the word, to proselytize, those are gifts of the Spirit, and I don't have them. I was actually corresponding with my pastor, who is Michelle Humphrey, at Amani UCC in Euclid, and I was telling her it's such a shame and very unfortunate that I don't have the gift of converting people. So I don't know what to tell you.
So you say there are people that have the gift?
Oh yes, there are people who have the gift. Absolutely.
Wait. When you say the gift, what does that mean? That's something, that's a term I'm not familiar with. What does that mean?
There are certain gifts of the Spirit, and one of them is the ability to go out and to preach the word and to convert people to Christianity. Like, some people have it. It is not the gift that was given to me. I don't have it. I can talk to you about my faith, but I would be at a loss to switch you over. In fact, the last time that I talked to somebody about my faith, she picked up her coat and left the bar. She didn't want to talk to me anymore. So I was like, wow, that was the opposite of conversion.
It was subtle. It was very subtle how she did it.
So was she an atheist or agnostic, or what was her position as it relates to faith? And
actually, it really was sort of a funny story. So we're at this bar. It's on Lee Road. It's the one with the long tables that has the craft cocktails and the craft beer. I forget what it's called. I go there all the time. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name. So she was a friend of one of my friends, and she was just talking about what she does in life. So one of the things that she does is she makes food. She's a caterer. Of desserts, very much like you. So there was a sex house, like a swinger house.
Oh, okay.
Like, people are going to go to the house and have sex with each other in public. Mm-hmm. And she was making chocolate-covered penises.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Of course, that's not.
Of course, I mean, you'd expect it, right?
Right. It's just.
And then
I'm gonna need her name.
And then the following day, she was going to Slavic Village for some sort of ruined house exhibit where you go into the house and there's art, and part of like the art experience is that you might fall through the floor. I'm not making this up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she said something like, "What are you doing this weekend?" I was like, "I'm going to church." I don't know.
After all that.
After all that. And she's like, "Well, yeah, I don't really believe in God anymore. And I think really God is more in this art, in this rundown house, and with these people." And I was like, there is no God in anything that you are doing right now. And she left. She did. So anyway, this is all to say, Miesha does not have the gifts of proselytizing. She didn't want to talk to my Christian butt anymore.
Okay.
Done.
Okay.
Done with that conversation.
Okay. So, but let's get back to what you said in terms of, you said your faith has remained steadfast throughout. It was not at all.
It's unchanged.
It's unchanged. And I want to follow up with Paul's question. If that is the case, then where do you see the role of prayer? If throughout this nothing changed, does that mean that in your mind prayer has an impact, has value, or is it just that because it's unchanged, it doesn't matter what you pray? I'm trying to understand how you process this.
It's actually it's kind of cool. So sort of where I began, like, so for me, I fully admit that part of my faith is cultural, right? Like, I don't know how to do anything except live my heritage, and it's very much like not just like my Black heritage. It is my maternal heritage. So that's one. Secondly, my soul and my person I find deep comfort in prayer. Okay. I find deep comfort in knowing that the Holy Spirit is always with me as my comforter and my advocate. But thirdly, and I've had like a lot of pastors actually kind of cringe at me when I say this, but it's true for me. Christianity is also very much my intellectual philosophy.
What do you mean by that?
It is. So, we were all coerced into reading like Plato's Republic in school. And so then remember the question that he poses is, what is the good life? Right? And so it's the philosophy of like, what does it mean to live the good life? What does the good life look like? And for me, Christianity it's the philosophy that I use to lead the good life. And for you guys who are atheists, I would actually love to hear how you formulate the good life in the absence of God. So one of the things I was thinking about, Phil, was as my husband lay dying, you were incredibly generous with your time. It was because for the 2 weeks that he was at in-home hospice care, I was taking care of him, and most people know who have had a relative that was in-home hospice care and you're caring for them, is that these people are very active in the evening. They get up, they get down, they talk, and they stir, and they're in pain, and there's so much that you need to physically minister to them in the dark hours of the night. And so then I wasn't getting any sleep. And I was so grateful that you and Lance and also Raymond's brothers would come over and relieve me for a few hours during the daylight hours so I could just go upstairs and just sleep for a moment until I had to start my duty again in the dark of night. What you did was generous and loving. So I would, as a Christian, in my Christian philosophy, right, give generosity and love from the philosophy of my Christian faith, like because Christ would have me do it, right? So like, where do you pull it from?
Paul, you take that question
Okay.
first, and then I'll take it. Okay.
So I firmly believe that my philosophy is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. One of my reasons,
Which is like Christian philosophy.
well, but it doesn't have to be because if as a human being, there's common sense as it relates to treating people in a good way rather than being mean. I am a vegetarian because I could no longer support eating animals. I can no longer justify. We're no longer in the hunting gathering stages of existence. So I said, if I tried it, I said, if I can go a period of time without eating animals, then I want out of that. Okay. And that's a part of me trying to do good things. I guess you could say that I live the life of a person that is Christian like, but it's not because I'm trying to be a Christian, because I don't believe that there is an omnipotent God up there that's judging us, that's writing down the good things that we're doing and the bad things that we're doing, and then there's going to be a report card at the end of our life. I don't believe that anymore. And I guess for me, it's about just trying to be a good person. And if that's not good enough, then, the problem I have with the Christian faith is they say that if you don't believe that Jesus died for our sins, rose again, and is coming back, that you're going to hell, which means that there's a lot of Buddhists that are going to hell, a lot of Islamists that are going to hell, Jewish people that are going to hell, even if they're good, even if they were never exposed to Christianity. So for me, it's all about just being good. And the thing you say that Phil did or does, that's what I try to do. I'm one of those people that if I'm in the grocery store and somebody's short on their money, or not even if they're short, I'll just tell the grocer, I'll say, hey, I'm paying for his food or her food too. Just because, you don't have to be a Christian to do good things for people. And that's my philosophy, basically.
Do you have a philosophy? Like, have you just like maybe read a secular philosophy that you got attached to?
Well, maybe I should give you a little bit of my background.
Okay,
I was raised Seventh-day Adventist. I was raised from the moment I came on this earth and knew who I was in the Seventh-day Adventist church. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor to do all the work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath for the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant. The fourth commandment of the Bible. The founder of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Ellen G. White, supposedly had the spirit of prophecy. So she had a separate book in addition to the Bible, The Desire of Ages, that she used to kind of tell people how to live their life, which meant no eating pork, no eating anything that was considered a scavenger, like catfish and things like that. Women couldn't wear jewelry. During wedding ceremonies, they exchanged watches. So I was raised in a pretty strict religion. When I went away to the military, I found the first contradiction in my faith or my religion, because in San Antonio, the people in the church, at Seventh-day Adventist Church, they exchanged rings. And I was like, I went to the chaplain. I said, hey, why are they able to exchange rings here in San Antonio and in Ohio? They can't exchange rings. Oh, well, that's Allegheny West Conference. They do things a little different there. I'm like, wait a minute, we're all Seventh-day Adventists. So why are they doing this as the same faith under the same God? So things started to slowly evolve for me. I remember the first time going downstairs. I was working in the terminal tower at the time, and it was around Christmas time, and I went down to look at the Christmas display, and it was a beautiful display of Christmas trees and lights and angels, and for the first time I looked and I said, well, where are the black people? Where's the representation of black folks in the angel world? All the wings, all the folks, and like I've said on previous shows, we don't seem to get wings. We get chicken wings. And as a result, I was like, well, wait a minute. And then I think about all the good things that I grew up believing were good, like Santa Claus, in the movies, the the good cowboys always wore the white hats and the bad cowboys always wore the black hats. So I was indoctrinated into a form of white supremacy. And Jesus, the image of Jesus, no matter what people want to tell me, right, that, he had skin of bronze and hair of wool, I always think of Kenny G. That's who Jesus looks like to me. And no matter how I try to change that image, and like I was telling them a couple shows ago, it's just like Santa Claus. The first time I sat on a black Santa's lap, I didn't know who the hell the man was, because I thought Santa might have been on bread, because this black man with a white beard was not Santa. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience as a young child. You probably accepted it. I don't know, maybe in my upbringing as a child, Santa Claus was a white man. He came down your chimney. He was fat, and he gave you toys. So all the good images, all the imagery, it slowly evolved to me. Things that weren't making sense to me started to make me question the existence of God.
I'm so stuck on Jesus as Kenny G.
Yeah, without the horn.
I think I wouldn't believe in Kenny G either.
Well,
I wouldn't.
But growing up, every house that I went into, there were three pictures you saw. You saw JFK, Martin Luther King, and white Jesus.
That's right.
Those are the three pictures without a doubt.
That's right.
And
you might see a big wooden spoon and a big wooden fork. I don't know why, but you might see that.
You might see that. But let me go.
I had a girlfriend. I lived in Columbus during most of my 20s, and I had a girlfriend who was a 7-day Adventist. Oh my God, she wore my butt out. Oh my gosh, it was hard to be friends with her. So Columbus has a huge rib cook-off every summer. That girl dragged me like 8 blocks because we had to find beef ribs.
Of course. Can't eat pork. That's right.
I remember my
pork?
feet were hurting and I was frustrated.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That is a tough one.
That was my background.
Isn't there like a cluster of 7-day Adventists in California that live a long time? Google it because
so
you
I
guys
know that
eat
they
super
have
healthy.
So there's Loma Linda is like this entire brand of foods that is 7-day Adventist brand, and they have a health doctrine in addition to their spiritual doctrine. They have a health doctrine on how you're supposed to eat, how you're supposed to live, how you're supposed to dress. They believe that women wearing jewelry was it goes back to Jezebel, the first prostitute, and how she used jewelry to lure men. And so that's why. But in those wedding ceremonies, you should see some of those watches. They had diamonds and all kinds of stuff. So they may as well have rings. So, but
it's kind of funny. Like now that I think about it, my girlfriend, she didn't wear makeup.
No.
I never.
Didn't
it's funny.
dawn
It's
on
like she never told me that's why she didn't wear makeup. But I mean, we worked together, right?
Mm-hmm.
We worked together in an accounting firm, and it was a bit unprofessional to not wear makeup. And she never wore makeup. But I wonder if that was ultimately
Probably
the reason.
played a role.
That's kind of interesting.
But I want to go back.
Well,
to,
let me jump in.
And I have to tell one other story about another kind
well,
of
hold on. Wait a minute.
The one more
Okay.
about
Okay.
Christian thing. So
Okay.
in my neighborhood in Richmond Heights, the Jehovah's Witnesses are always out in full force.
Oh yeah.
And so then they knock on the door, and my 2 sons, right? One day they were like, "What do they want?" And I was like, "Well, they're Jehovah's Witness. They're Christians, but they have like another set of rules." And they're like, "What?" And I was like, "They don't celebrate Christmas and they don't give presents." My elder son was about 5 years old. No, he was like 8 at this point, right? Jehovah's Witness knock on the door. The younger one, who was 5, went to go open the door for them, and the 8-year-old screamed, "Don't let them in! They don't celebrate Christmas!"
he was.
And they weren't doing that Christianity. No.
You can't get toys. I don't want any parts of that. But I do want to go back to the question that you raised. You said, how do you process things and where do you get your kindness from? I think that it's along the lines of what Paul said. I mean, I don't lean on any particular doctrine or theology. I lean on being present as much as I possibly can. And in those moments where I was able to show kindness to you and to try to my best to ease Ray's transition, that stemmed from simply recognize that Ray and I have known each other at on 40 years. I mean, just an incredible long time. We partied together at Martha's Vineyard, and to see my brother lying in bed in pain, I told him I loved him. I shook his hand. I held his hand. I did all of that simply because, as Paul said, human to human, it was this is the only thing I could do. That's all I could do. It had nothing to do with an omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient God. It had to do with right there. I saw Ray lying in bed, and then I remember, and I spoke about this at the funeral, that one of the nights we came over, he said, "Can I just lie down for a second?" He said, "Can you watch Ray?" And Lance and I did. Miesha, you were gone. You were so tired, and that brought me so much. And it's kind of ironic to say it, but it brought me so much joy to see that you finally were able to just relax. And I mean, you went into, because it's 2 hours later, you were like, what, it was like it took you a while to come out of it, but that was the situation. So it was, to me, being present in the moment allowed me to do that. And like Paul, I mean, I've helped people on the street. When people, if they're standing on the corner and I have time and I have money right there to disposable, I will slide somebody $5. I'm saying, if you can stand on that corner for 8 hours in the blistering sun, God bless you. You can do that. I mean, it's far be it from me to pass judgment on why they do it. People say, well, you're getting scammed. I say, somebody's gonna scam me out of $5. Trust me, that's not. Yes, that's not going to break me. And then the best example was, there was a woman in Fairlawn, and she was standing at the corner where Giant Eagle and Sam's Club and Walmart are, and across from Aldi. And she held up a sign. She says, "I'm pregnant. I need food, diapers, and what have you." And I drove past her the first time. I'm like, I don't know. But then I drove past her the second time, and I stopped, and I did two things. I said, one, I'll give you this money. And I said, two, can I take a picture? And she said, sure. And she didn't speak very good English, so she held up the sign. I said, no, I want it to come up to your eyes because I don't want you to think that I'm exploiting you. And she didn't quite understand. But I took it. I put it on Facebook. And it's amazing how many people spend a lot of time criticizing me, saying, well, how could you be so gullible and things. I'm like, again, if you see somebody that says they're in need, who are we to stop and pass that kind of judgment? Now, we all have to use discretion because nobody has an unlimited amount of resources. Right. But for that moment, for a woman to hold up a sign and say, I need diapers, I need baby food, I need this, I'm like, $10. So for me, it's being present. It's looking and trying to process that moment to say, if I can be of service, if I can be of help, then I'm going to do it. And if I can't, I can't. And I don't lose sleep when I know that I can't help someone. But if I feel much better when I do because I can, and I will. And so that's my motivation. It has nothing to do. To go on to Paul's point about my background, I was born into Catholicism. And Catholicism has all kinds of warts and problems and issues. And I went to church every Sunday. I was in catechism. Was not an altar boy. Did not have to go through that. But I went, have my first communion, all that. But my point is that when I got to Stanford, I slowly began my slow walk. I did a crip walk away from Christianity. And when I went to France, that was the beginning of the end, because I met people from around the world who had different religions. I was like, religion is based on geography. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I'm American means that I have a 95% chance that I'm going to be Christian. It has nothing to do with the theology. It's just that's where you're born. Mm-hmm. So all that to say, and I've been in a cult. I was in the Church of the Open Door. This was around the same time Jim Jones had his cult in the Bay Area and took it down to Guyana and all that thing. So I know what it's like to be brainwashed. I was brainwashed for like 6 weeks, and it was intense. But fortunately, I broke away after only 6 weeks, but I still have memories of being in the Church of the Open Door, led by a white man who sat there and recruited Jews for Jesus. So I've been through all of that. I've processed it. I've gotten past that. I'm very comfortable being atheist and very comfortable trying to do the best I can with whatever I have. And the final point that I'll say is, as Paul mentioned, having survived stage 4 cancer, having been told in 2016 that I was not going to live past 2019, get my affairs in order, get your shit together because you ain't going to make it. And here I am in 2024, looking forward to 2025 and beyond. I didn't curse God when I was diagnosed.
Right.
I just said, damn, that's kind of fucked up. I just said, oh man, and I went to that, why me? But it wasn't, Lord, why me? I was like, damn, I thought I took care of myself, but I dealt with the prostate cancer, and I was very adamant about trying to do the best I could. So when I announced that, not only had I sat across from the Grim Reaper and beat the Grim Reaper at the staring game once, he's gonna win the next time. I will blink and it'll be game over. But my point is that when I announced it, people were like, well, all praise to God and glory. I said, no. I said, because I didn't damn God. I didn't, curse God when I was diagnosed. I said, I give my praise to the marvelous team at Simon Cancer at University Hospital. Those are people that I owe my life to because they worked with me to work out something that's literally saved my life. Had nothing to do with the idea of a deity. So I say all that to say, you ask, where does it come from? I'm 65 years old. I've had 65 years to process this, and I'm looking forward to the next, hopefully, if I get another 10 years. And I say if, because, cancer can come roaring back. But if I get another 10 years, I'll be happy, and I'll do the best.
That's similar to me because we both had battles with prostate cancer. And I have to admit that was one of the most difficult things that I had to deal with, was not being able to pray for God to take the cancer out of my system. Because for the first time, I said to myself, well, first of all, God has to know that it's in my system, and he allowed it to get in there. So I shouldn't have to. I'm like, hey, God, I don't know if you heard, I got prostate cancer. Because he's omniscient, he's all-knowing. And because he's all-powerful and all-knowing, then he knows that if this cancer doesn't get out of my system, then I'm probably going to die. So I didn't feel like I had to ask him to take the cancer out of my system. And, as a result of that, I didn't blame him, and I kind of let God off the hook for the first time. When things horrible happened, when Donald Trump was reelected to be president of the United States, I didn't say, God, how could you let this happen? I didn't blame God because I didn't feel like God was in control of that decision. So I want to kind of circle back around to something you said. It sounded like you were kind of alluding to the fact that prayer for you is almost therapeutic. But I guess my question for you is, do you feel that prayer is outcome-based?
I wanted to say something about, you said that you didn't ask God for a healing, and you didn't discuss, you didn't
and it was hard.
Sit down on your knees and say, God, this is what the current problem is.
Right.
Because he's omniscient and he knows,
Right.
So I did change faiths. So I was raised, my parents were like, my mother and my dad, they were both raised like Church of God in Christ in Mississippi. So this
is that referred to as Kojic?
Yeah, Kojic.
Kojic. Okay, Kojic.
Yeah, so this is the no makeup, fully covered church 7 times a week and twice on Sunday. Oh, yeah. Speaking in tongues.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's
pretty intense.
It's really intense. And so then they wanted to change their denomination. So initially when I was growing up, they were like seeking churches, and they were all churches in what's called New Thought Church Christianity. So we went to Christian Science, right? And Science of Mind, and finally Unity, and then ultimately the church that my mother became a minister in, which is the Universal Foundation of Better Living, which is essentially the black brand of the Unity Church of Christianity. It's the same dog.
Oh, UCC. No, not UCC.
No, actually, I'm UCC now, but
Okay.
Unity is different from UCC.
Okay.
I was talking to this wonderful friend of mine who's a minister in the Presbyterian Church, and I was telling her that I was raised in New Thought Christianity, and she said, "Wow, that's really interesting. I've never heard of black people belonging to a church that doesn't believe in the divinity of Christ." It was crazy because like she summed it up right there. Because in New Thought Christianity, Jesus is the way shower, and if you're really on your game, you can do everything that Christ does. Like you can heal people, you can drop a mountain, you can speak and calm the waves. Like and to the extent that you can't do that, it's because you haven't accepted your Christ within. So as you can imagine, for my parents, to have a God within was very comforting for them. Coming out of the Kojic tradition, where God really basically hated you and wants you to condemn you to hell, right? And here you have a God within who loves you infinitely and wants, it's prosperity gospel too, right?
Yeah, it is.
A God who like wants you to be rich. Like they really attached to that God. But I was a kid in that religion, and it was way too hard for me because in Unity, you speak into existence. You say it, it's going to become true. If you think it, it's going to materialize in your life. And so then when I was growing up, I had this feeling that every time something went wrong, it was because I didn't have proper control over the God within, right? And finally, it was actually when I was in track, I went to a Catholic friend of mine. She was very committed Catholic. We ran together. We were seniors in high school. And I went to her and I said, in your religion, can things just go wrong? And she's like, yeah. I'm like, really? Like, it wasn't your fault? Like, literally, things just took a left turn. You had no control over it? She said, yeah, absolutely. And I was like, yeah, I need to worship God in a different way. So that set me on my spiritual journey. So this is like my Miesha going into spiritual rebellion. As soon as I got to college at Columbia University in New York City, yeah, I started going to a Baptist church. And for me, this is radical. I'm like, yep, I'm going to Riverside Baptist Church because I'm a crazy girl. And it was just so comforting for me to be in a mainline Protestant church. Thanks for letting me say that. Oh, I wanted to, you said something about how you just, thank you so much, how you couldn't, you're talking about in mainline Christianity how, Jesus is Savior and you are saved by your belief that he's the only begotten Son of God. He came to this earth fully human and divine. He was dead, he rose, and he's coming back.
Right.
Now, I totally believe that, 100%. Phil knows that we have a wonderful friend in common who is a Muslim, and he's a very, very devout Muslim. Like, he's our close friend. We adore him. And he's been my friend for like 20 years now, too. So, he was talking to me, and he goes, Miesha, do you really believe that the only way to paradise is through Jesus Christ? And I said, yup. And if I die and I'm staring at Muhammad, I'm a lot of trouble. But I'm doubling down on Jesus. That's my guy.
But okay, so let's explore that a little bit because the way you described your journey, it sounds as if this has been a generational inheritance, and it is you fully embraced your generational inheritance, and did not. And again, I'm not asking you to do that, but I'm just saying, based on what I've heard, is that this was embraced because your grandfather, great grandfather, grandfather, father, mother, all have had those spiritual influences over you. And so, my question to you is, what would you say if one of your sons came back to you and said, "Mom, upon further reflection," this is hypothetical. I'm not saying this about Carl or Thomas. This is just a hypothetical. "Mom and Dad, I've had a change of heart. I'm out from this particular religious belief that I've inherited from you and from Grandma and Granddad and blah, blah." What would you say to them if they came back and said that they've had a change of heart?
It's really interesting that you say that because I can't imagine that happening, because I would argue that they're more hardcore than I am. Like, Carl and Thomas are leading, like, evangelical.
Well, no. That's
weird.
No. It's like a law school. You think deal with hypotheticals. So we're just talking about hypothetical. How would you, as a parent, if one of your children, let's say, if one of your children came to you, not the in real life Carl or Thomas, I'm saying just your child, as a parent, if they came to you and said, "Mom and Dad, after 6, 7 generations," how many generations? That's quite a few you have. That it stops here because I'm going to do. How would you handle that? I'm not saying Carl or Thomas in particular. How would you handle if somebody drew the line and just said that I'm not inheriting that generational inheritance? I'm not accepting of that generational inheritance.
Like, honestly, it is unimaginable to me because it's so far from the reality. I mean, my mother religiously kidnapped my children because Raymond and I
Wait, what does that mean?
I'll tell you what she did. Raymond and I were raising the children at Amani UCC in Euclid with Pastor Michelle Humphrey, and then COVID. And so my mother was a pastor at the church where I was raised. And so then how there was this big pivot at COVID where all the churches went to live streaming, right?
Exactly.
Well, she needed somebody to live stream. She's like, I know what I'm going to do. She hired her grandsons to come to her church to do the live stream. So for the past 4 years, Carl and Thomas go to church with their big mom and listen to her preach. So, they haven't been back to Amani. She religiously kidnapped my children. because that's what big moms do.
But does it make a difference what denomination you're in? If there's one God, it should make a difference between one Imani church or.
I guess so. And even further.
I think okay. Unexpected, Phil. You did get me on that one because I do want my kids to be mainline Protestant. I want them to know mainline doctrine, dogma, and creed.
Because
that is what I believe.
Okay, so
I literally want them to know it.
Mm-hmm.
And, Unity Church of Christianity is a little loosey-goosey. They're a little loosey-goosey with the dogma. And so then that bothers me a little bit.
Okay.
So do you think that it's important as it relates to their salvation?
I'm sorry to totally disappoint you on this one. And by the way, my husband Raymond, oh my goodness. this was a 22-year conversation until his death. And by the way, I guess in a sense he won because as he lay dying, he affirmed repeatedly his belief in Christ and that he was going to sit at the left hand of Jesus. And that is why he did not fight his death. And he died in peaceful confidence.
Nice.
because of his adherence to the gospel. It always annoyed my husband that I refused to think about eternity. Like, I believe Jesus is coming back. Maybe he'll come back before I die. I don't know. Maybe it'll happen. Time out for a joke. It was a white comedian told like this joke. It was so good. This was a white comedian. He was like, yeah, I got a lot of black friends. And Jesus is totally black. Let me tell you why Jesus is totally black. Because he's like, yeah, I'm coming back. Yeah, I don't know when. I'm going to get there. I'm a little late.
I know I said I'd be here.
I will be there.
I'm on my way. I'm 5 minutes away.
Right. I had some trouble with my car. I'm on my way.
Down the street.
That's right. I told you in advance. No one knows the time of the hour.
Okay, so we got 5 minutes before we have to say goodbye. Did we get any callers there? Okay, no callers. Okay, that's fine because this has been a fascinating conversation. Paul, I'll let you say, ask, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this is a wrap. But Miesha, I just want to thank you for coming and joining us on Two Peas in the podcast, sharing your personal story. I give you my most sincere condolences on the loss of your husband, and I just appreciate. I am one of those people that even though I don't consider myself a Christian, if you sneeze, I say God bless you, right? And that probably stems from the fact that I was brought up in that environment, right? So I get it. And where I'm at right now is that I have more questions about things, and if I don't get the right answers, I just don't accept it on face value. But I totally respect where you are right now and your perspective on Christianity.
Yeah. Well, Miesha, we've talked offline, and having been there with you with the loss of Ray, is nothing I can say more than I appreciate your strength. I appreciate your courage to be here. And
with or without faith, you have been a friend. You have been a neighbor. And I am so grateful.
Well,
obviously, you were there while my husband was dying, but you have been true and faithful to me and the boys afterwards, and giving help where you can offer it. So I'm, I wish you loved Jesus, but we love you anyway.
Well, I love you and the boys. And by the way, it's so funny. Last night I was scrolling through my phone and I saw a picture that we took last Labor Day. That picture still gets me, me, you, and Ray. Last Labor Day, and how time just slips away. But to everyone that's watched this, listens to this, thank you for watching and listening to Two Peas in a Podcast. On behalf of Paul and Miesha, I want to say thank you and have a great night.
See you guys.